Every character, location, or experience you've read about in my crime fiction novels holds a piece of reality. I'm Helen Taylor. Welcome to the story behind my stories, the video podcast where crime fiction meets my authentic experience. Here, we delve into the real-life inspirations and intimate stories that shaped my novels. Discover how my everyday encounters, adventures, and travels translate into tales as gripping as they are genuine. The story behind my stories goes behind the words on the page to reveal the backstory that inspires my writing. Hit follow or subscribe and ensure you're part of this journey. Hi. Okay, welcome to season 3 of the story behind my stories. This time it's Aloha Goodbye. There you go. So Aloha Goodbye is the third in the Matthew Goodwin detective series, and as you know if you've been following along, I alternate between an international scenario, location, and a UK based one. So first we had tie-dye, where Goodwin was all set out in Thailand, and in Connecting Trains it was all set in the UK, and then now Aloha Goodbye is set on a cruise ship on the way to Hawaii. Now, this series I am going to be recording here in this beautiful location, which is Crete. It's my favourite writing place, and I'm doing the podcast from here for this season, which gives me a bit more of the experience of how warm it was when we were on the cruise to Hawaii. So this first episode I'm going to go through why I set one on the cruise ship and why Hawaii. So first of all, why a cruise? I did a cruise back in the 90s around the Caribbean and loved it. I never thought cruising would be my thing because of the inability to get off. But it really is just like a floating hotel, so you only have to unpack once, but you get to see all of these different places because your hotel just moves with you. And I hadn't done another cruise until 2022, which is when I went on the cruise to Hawaii. Now, I had my daughter back in the early noughties, and she isn't a big fan of the sun. She isn't a big fan of water sports or sand. And I am. I love the sun, and I love being close to the ocean, doing sports in the ocean. I've done windsurfing, swimming a lot when I did triathlon, and I love being close to the sea, and I rode for years, etc. Won't give too much away because I might come up in another book. But we were trying to come up with a location that we could go on our family holiday. She was 15 at the time. And the thing is, as you can tell from the story behind tie-dye, I've travelled a lot in Asia. I went over to Australia, New Zealand, and so there is not that many places I haven't been, and I'm never had been somebody who tended to go back. I obviously did in Thailand, and I suppose as I've got older I have gone back, but the sort of travelling I did to some of the locations that Lauren wanted to go to are ones that I don't necessarily want to go back to. She wants to do Australia, and I loved Australia, but I have been there twice, and we couldn't do that in a normal 2-week holiday anyway. But the big thing is that she isn't super active, wanting to go out for runs and explore places, or wanting to go whitewater rafting down the Colorado River or anything like that. So, and she hates the sun, she hates sand. So, but she really wanted to go to Hawaii, and it was one place I hadn't been. And it was one place that I did want to go because, having done triathlon for years, Hawaii, Kona, is the mecca, the ultimate for Ironman triathlon. So I wanted to go for that. Plus, when I was younger, I watched and loved Hawaii 5-0, and obviously they've just done a remake of that, which I watched with Lauren, and she loved that. Well, and that was where she sort of got her, I want to go to Hawaii. And so she talked about Hawaii. I looked about booking to go and do Hawaii as a trip, with Lauren wanting to go to Hawaii but not enjoying water sports or sand, beaches, sitting on the beach. We talked it over and ended up thinking, actually, it's cheaper to cruise, and then she's got all of the stuff that she can do on the ship, with kids of her own age, and they could do what they wanted, and then I could do what I wanted, which was to run around the deck, sunbathe, listen to some podcasts, read, and so we decided Hawaii as a cruise. So that was the basis of this book, and if you've read the book, or I've got a copy, you will see that there is an acknowledgement, and in the acknowledgements I said, for those who believed in me and encouraged me to write another in the series, especially Yvette Gibbons, nagging me and being in my bubble throughout COVID and suggesting this one. So in COVID, she read Tie-Dye and Connecting Trains, absolutely loved them, and almost on a weekly basis, when are you going to write the next one? When are you going to write the next one? So then when we went off and did the cruise, she said, are you taking your laptop, you're going to write another one? And I wasn't in that place then, so no, I didn't. But when I thought, okay, I'm ready to write another book, which was at the beginning of this year, this was the natural one to go to, because she'd pushed on that, and because it was an experience I've had, and the cruise ship atmosphere, the fact that you are stuck in one place with a big group of people, some of which you like, some of which you don't like, made a good setting for a crime fiction novel. It's been done before, I'm sure, and it will be done again. But as my authentic writing is based from my own experience, then that is why this was the next good step for my series. So, whilst the ship, I'll tell you, was a Princess cruise ship. That wasn't the one that I travelled around the Caribbean, but then I since did another cruise after Hawaii with Lauren again, down the Panama Canal, and then I since did one around the Canary Islands with Ben last year. So I've got all that cruising experience, and those three, the Panama Canal, the Hawaii and the Canary Islands, were all done on Princess cruises. And I love them. Absolutely love them. They're not paying me to say anything here. I would struggle to go with somebody else now. But it was brilliant when I went with Lauren, because she was able to go to kids club all day, it's teens club, and on various of their cruises they've done great things for the kids, or the teenagers, and obviously we do excursions when you're at land. But the thing about the Hawaii one was you have 5 full days at sea before you get to Hawaii. And that for me was, that's going to be a really good thing, because on the ship they can't get off. It's not like, we're going to land tomorrow so we can, pass the body over and the investigation and everything. So that was the reason that we set it on a cruise ship. Not all of the parts in the book come from the cruise to Hawaii, but I will talk a little bit more about that in episode 2. Why Hawaii? For Lauren, it was having seen it on Hawaii 5-0. She's a big fan of Disney, and Disney have used Hawaii for several locations or characters, and particularly Stitch. So she'd always had, she was a young teenager at the time and wanted to go somewhere that she'd had some experience of, and I'd always thought it'd be really cool to learn to surf. If you'd seen one of my social media posts, we were down in Wales this summer and had a surfing lesson with Surfability, a charity that helps people with disabilities have the experience of surfing and teaches young people. I wasn't far enough from my surgery for my ACL to try it then, but I went for a swim. And so you associate, or I do, associate surfing with Hawaii, and the big thing as well for me was that long 112-mile bike ride on an Ironman through those lava fields that just go on forever and ever. And so I really wanted to go to Hawaii. It was one of the few places left in the world that I haven't been to that I wanted to. After that, there was only 2 left, both of which I have done, and both of which will be books. But I had been to 25 different states in America, and so Hawaii tips me over the halfway, or brings me to the halfway, and so there was lots of reasons why I wanted to go to Hawaii, and I will go into more detail about things like Pearl Harbor and the memorial in a future episode, because that is really important to me. But this first episode is why Hawaii and why a cruise ship. And so, as I've said, Hawaii, it was somewhere where Lauren wanted to go. I hadn't been to before, so the two of us could both experience something new. And the cruise ship setting, it just gave me so much opportunity for Goodwin to be, or for the crime and the murders to be enclosed. Just the thought of being captive on a vessel with a murderer just gives it something that allows you to utilise that in the writing of it. And then I needed to establish how Goodwin was going to be involved in a murder. Obviously, he's on holiday, and the same as us. He took the same plane. He did the same COVID tests before we went, because this was at the end of COVID. Had to have the vaccinations, everything that we all did, because we all knew from COVID how close a cruise ship is. And so, because there was that added thing, especially the mask wearing, I wanted that to be the same time for Goodwin, so that I could utilise that a little too. There's very little mention of COVID except for the masks and getting the tests in order to be able to take the cruise. Otherwise, it's very little mentioned. But I guess I would like to mention at this point that I was incredibly impressed with Princess and how they dealt with that so soon after the end of that phase in all of our lives. I couldn't have told you what any crew member looked like from there down, because they all wore a mask all the time, and you were never more than 20 feet from a sanitisation station. And so I wanted to sort of utilise that a little, but only in creating a more creating the atmosphere more. But I would like to stress that there is no COVID involved in the book, and there is nothing where that's utilised or brought upon at all. It is all about the cruising and going to Hawaii, and then the restrictions that he has. And he takes Jane from Connecting Trains, who is now a year or so further on, and their relationship has developed. And so this was a surprise trip for him and Jane, that he's taking her to Hawaii, which has been also synonymous with romance the world over. And actually on that cruise we did meet a lot of people who were celebrating anniversaries, and they'd gone to Hawaii for their honeymoon or an engagement, and then they were going back to celebrate their 10-year, 20-year, 30-year wedding anniversary. So that was why I used my experience on that cruise and the other two, and used that atmosphere to be able to create more conflict, create more fear, not just for the passengers if they were to find out, but also for the crew and the captain and Goodwin of letting a killer loose in Hawaii. If it was a murder. But we will go into that more as we go through this series. So stay with me, and we will do next week. The episode will all be about the three cruises I've done and what I took from each one, in order to round off my cruising experience in the book, rather than that I went on one cruise and that was it. No, I have been on several, and I do utilise things that happened on other cruises in this book as if they happened on that one, which is the whole thing for me about using my experience as a setting for the book. And we will talk about that more next week. So have a good week, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye. Every character, location, or experience you've read about in my crime fiction novels holds a piece of reality. I'm Helen Taylor. Welcome to the story behind my stories, the video podcast where crime fiction meets my authentic experience. Here, we delve into the real-life inspirations and intimate stories that shaped my novels. Discover how my everyday encounters, adventures, and travels translate into tales as gripping as they are genuine. The story behind my stories goes behind the words on the page, to reveal the backstory that inspires my writing. Hit follow or subscribe and ensure you're part of this journey.